Journey into the Arctic. Good evening. My name is An, and welcome to tonight's sleep story, where we will be following the adventures of the brave explorer Amelia. Tonight, this remarkable explorer recounts her night snuggled up inside an icy glacier in the far reaches of the north. So please take a moment to get comfortable and take a few deep breaths. And now, let's follow Amelia into the Arctic. High in the icy waters of the Arctic Ocean, between the coastline of northern Norway and the ever-shifting ice of the North Pole, there's a chain of islands known as Svalbard. Named after the Norse words for cold shores, this cluster of islets and skerries is encased in ice and snow. The land is roamed by polar bear, Arctic fox, and reindeer, while the seas that surround them are traveled by walrus, seal, and beluga whale. The small portion of this land that isn't covered in snow is bare rock, grown over only by lichen, moss, and the occasional sprouting dwarf willow or birch tree. With barely any rainfall and low humidity, this is an Arctic desert, as dry as the Sahara's hot. It's an unlikely place for people to live. Yet, there are those who call this place home, outnumbered by bears though they are. Svalbardians mainly reside on the island of Spitsbergen, or the land of the pointed mountains, which is the largest in the chain. On this island, located at 78 degrees north, is the township of Longyearbyen. A few hardy souls live here, in houses painted in bright shades of yellow, red, green, and blue. It's this place, the northernmost continuously inhabited community in the world, that has intrigued me for years. Many adventurers visit this city at the start of a much longer journey. They stop here to get supplies before setting off to reach the geographical North Pole. But I have often wondered why some people choose to stay much longer, to live so very remotely, so very far from the rest of the world, in a place where winters are long and snow is frequent. And so, I resolved to make the journey myself. Upon my arrival, a sign indicates the presence of polar bears. These majestic creatures are wonderful to witness, but you must be trained to deal with these furry residents. Within the town, there are hotels, restaurants, and even a university. I walk along its so-called streets, which are usually no more than trails in the snow, made by repeated footsteps. My boots crunch on the ice in a muffled crackle, and with no one else around, I find the sound comforting and beautiful to listen to. It's coming to the end of winter on my visit, and daylight is starting to return to these isles. Up here, from October to February, polar nights rule the skies, with darkness lasting over 80 days per year. Yet, it's rarely completely black. The aurora borealis, or northern lights, like to come out to play. They cast their dazzling aura of emerald and sapphire across the night sky, ribbons of light looking as though a careless artist has tipped over pots of ink. The stars up here, far from any light pollution, are the brightest I've ever seen. And when the moon is full and high, its white light reflects from the snowy ground, illuminating the frozen scene in silvery radiance. Then, when darkness pulls back, little by little, the light of the sun returns more and more, until the residents celebrate the midnight sun, when 24 hours of daylight takes over. But right here, right now, I'm at the magical moment in between the two. the sky is a mottled shade of gray. It doesn't quite feel like daylight, but nor is it the darkness of nighttime. Instead, it's a half-light that forms a near-invisible backdrop against the snow-covered mountains that rise behind the town. All the lights in the homes I pass are switched on, the street lights ever twinkling in this permanent twilight. As I reach the community, snow begins to fall, lightly, softly, and with no sound at all. The population here is tiny compared to most cities. I stand on the edge of this small urban center on the coast, looking out to a seemingly endless sea to catch a glimpse of the creature that brought people here in the first place, the whale. In the 1600s, it is said that a boat could scarcely pass through the water without bouncing off one of these giant mammals. Now, they are harder to spot. So each time a graceful whale's tail is seen, lifted high out of the water, propelling the whale far into the deep, it inspires a heartwarming glow. I turn back towards the houses and their warm lights. Each abode is well built, providing warmth against the elements. They are framed by vast mountainous ridges that rise behind them like a set of rocky curtains. But it's not the colorful buildings that catch my eye, nor is it the snow-covered peaks rising on the landscape. Rather, it's the space between those rocky summits that interests me. To some, it may look like an insignificant blank space or a trough of snow. But there's so much more, because beneath that layer of fresh powder is a geological wonder, the Lars Glacier. Glaciers are formed by layer upon layer of fallen snow that compress together over time, eventually becoming slow-moving ice. The one in Svalbard is no different, but it hides a secret. Every summer, as the temperature rises, the snow layer on top begins to melt. This water slowly and steadily drips and trickles down the sides of the icy mass. As the water flows, it pushes against the glacier's edges until it's inside the glacier itself. It presses deeper and deeper until a network of rivers begin to flow within the glacial body, weaving all the way to the bottom. When winter arrives, the water stops. Every single waterway dries up, leaving behind an elaborate complex of caverns called meltwater channels, which are perfect for exploration. Outside the glacier, the winds are blowing, but inside, the climate is much more temperate. There's no breeze to whistle through the ice, and I can stay warm with the right equipment. It's incredible to think that amid all this wilderness, all the snow and ice and wind and frost, there is a place of sanctuary, one designed by nature herself. And it's that very place where I will be spending the night. But first, I have to get there. I meet my friend Peter in a cabin on the edge of town. He's brought 2 orange sleds known as pulks. We begin packing right away, because soon we'll head outside again and start our long climb up to bed. Packing my kit for an adventure is a supremely cathartic experience. I do it purposefully, slowly, and methodically. I must make sure that I have everything I need, but without any excess weight. Nothing is rushed, and nothing should be rushed. That way, I can walk deep into nature, confident that she and I are on a somewhat equal footing. My food and camping stove are to be packed first. In the cold, I'll need warming up, and hot drinks and comforting meals always do the job. There's no need to carry too much water, Nature will provide that in the form of the snow, which I can melt. Pots and utensils go in next, as well as a bottle that I will fill later with hot water to warm my sleeping bag before I get inside it. Now for sleeping. I have a voluminous sleeping bag filled with baffles of feathers which trap warm air inside, making my zipped-up cocoon toasty warm. Underneath will be my camping mat, and on this occasion, I'm taking 2. They're thicker than the usual ones I would carry on a non-snowy adventure, but this is not a normal camping trip. I'll blow these up, which has the double purpose of inflating my bed and making me warm through the activity. For a pillow, I will use my duvet jacket rolled up inside its own hood for that extra touch of luxury. Next, I pack extra layers of clothing. There will be no need to wear too many bulky items, as that stops the heat in the sleeping bag from reaching me. Instead, I've brought thin layers of natural fabric, mainly merino wool, which keep me dry. Since walking up to the glacier will be hot work, changing into warm, dry layers for bed, including a new hat, will be necessary. I pack my safety equipment, extra gloves and socks, and a head torch. Light cannot find its way inside the glacier, and it will be darker than any winter ever seen here. I begin my ritual of layering up my clothing now, from my warm socks to my big, thick-lined boots. I put on my jacket, tie back my hair, pull my warm, soft hat over my ears, and secure my cozy ski mask. I attach snowshoes to my boots. They remind me of tennis rackets on the feet of friendly cartoon characters I watched as a child. The final step is to attach the pulk to myself. This is in the form of a belt secured just above my hips. As I clip it into place, I feel its warm embrace, like that of a loved one, a safe and reassuring feeling that tells me I'm being looked after. After pulling on 2 pairs of gloves, I signal to Peter that I'm ready to go. With a nod of his head, we set off. 2 adventurers headed for higher ground. At the start of any long walk, I feel very conscious of my body. It's as though each part of me is checking in. I feel my feet firm on the snow as it compresses under each step. My legs are now used to walking in the wider gait that a snowshoe requires. I find a steady rhythm treading onwards, not quick enough to get tired, yet not slow enough to get cold. In my gloved hands, I clasp 2 light walking poles, which help me ascend the slopes when they become steep, while still allowing my arms to swing in a natural rhythm with my feet. The only thing that doesn't move too much is my face. It's the one part of me exposed to the cold temperature, but I don't try to cover it with my scarf as many others do. Instead, I enjoy this feeling of the outside air. It makes me feel present in the moment. If Peter and I try to talk, our words will be stolen away by the wind. And so, the journey to the glacier is near silent. To anyone back in town, we must look like 2 brightly colored dots, making our way so slowly, they would wonder if we were moving at all. This is particularly true when we reach a section of steeper terrain, when another well-rehearsed procedure must take place. A bar on the back of our snowshoes needs to be flipped to give our feet an additional platform to help us move upwards. People often picture a struggle against the elements in the Arctic world, but actually, here on this glacier, I don't feel as though I'm working against nature at all. Rather, I feel I'm working with her, knowing how to navigate with a calm mind. On the last section of steep ground, the snowbank is so untouched by any other creature that it feels as though we are the only people in the world ever to have stepped foot here. We slow our pace. Our bodies are becoming tired, but that's not the reason I choose to linger. I want to enjoy this last bit of the journey before descending into the unknown. So while Peter locates the entry point, mapped by the tips of 2 red poles and covered by a square of wood, I take one last look at the panorama ahead. Down the mountain, lights from the snowmobiles move around like fireflies. The roofs of the houses are coated with a thick layer of snow, so that they're barely recognizable as homes. The sea is as gray as the sky above it, and the horizon is an impossible point to pick out. From here, the sky and the ocean blend together as one. The only point of clarity is the mountain alongside me. Some of the rocks protrude from the snow, and, in this twilight, appear as charcoal smudges made on a clean sheet of fine-grained paper. I feel transported onto this page, a small speck of color amid the pale scene. But my world is about to change. "Ready?" asks Peter, the only human utterance I've heard for hours. "Ready," I reply and lead the way. I swap my snowshoes for crampons, and I'm glad for them as I hold on to the rope and kick my footsteps into the ice below my feet. I turn on my head torch, and for several minutes, my view is only that of the ice wall directly in front of my face. It's so close that the light bounces straight off it and dazzles me. So I look down at my feet instead. I'm very aware of my breath, a slow and steady inhalation and exhalation that mirrors each move of my boot. Beyond that, I can hear a dripping sound that comes from somewhere below, a sigh of the formation of the tunnel I'm headed into. As before, I found my walking rhythm again and become almost hypnotized by it. One foot moves down first, then a hand slides down the rope, then comes the other foot. Its predictability is a comfort. Then my right foot finds level ground. My left foot joins it, and I let go of the rope in my hand to turn around. As I see the scene lit up across the walls by the beam of my head torch, my breath is once again in focus. In this sliver of light I've brought with me, everywhere I look, diamonds seem to be glistening. When I look up, it's as though there are so many chandeliers, each one more ornate than the next. 10 feet or more above my head. The walls themselves resemble layers of a rainbow cake, though rather than primary colors, these have all been influenced by the natural world. At ground level, where my crampons grip into the bubbled ice floor, the tones are muted shades of coffee. As they rise in striped layers, they become more brunette, tan, and auburn. Then they give way to clear swirls and thick white bands. Before this moment, I never realized the multitude of hues that brown and white could be. I hear boots clicking into the ice above me. Peter is making his way down. I move further into the chamber. It's narrow at first, then widens. As his head torch beam joins mine, it's as if we're in a dance hall. The icicles catch the light as though on a mirrored ball hanging from the ceiling. For the next few minutes, we do nothing more than stand and look, watching the light play. We notice that all the muffled sounds of the world above have been replaced by a thick soup of silence. Each step we make down here reverberates and seems to be reflected by the walls of ice. I struggle to find the right words to capture the magic I'm witnessing. And then I stop trying, and instead, just enjoy the spectacle. It's tricky to get a sense of time down here, but no matter what the time says on the clock, my eyes are beginning to feel heavy. There's a little way to go until I find my perfect bedroom. We move down the passage, every now and again marveling at the swirls that water has created. Occasionally, we stop to utter a single wow when we catch sight of a glistening cluster of ice that has formed a sculpture, frozen in perpetual motion, resembling wax dripping down a candlestick. Then I see what I'm looking for. A perfect nook above the main passageway. Peter is happy to sleep in the tunnel, but I want to climb further into the belly of this glacier and feel its embrace. I pull myself up onto a ledge, which turns out to be an oval-shaped platform, almost perfectly designed to be a bed. This is where I will sleep. I rejoice aloud. Marking it with a glow stick, I backtrack through the tunnel to help Peter lower down the pulps into tonight's home. The next process starts slowly and methodically. I am warmed by my movement, and then again by inflating my camping mats. I create a nest of heat with sleeping bags and fleece jumpers. Then I begin to boil my camping stove. While the walls where the ice has recessed, I place lit candles. The flicker of the tiny flames turns the clear stripes in the ice from a cold, clear glass to a smoldering glimmer of tangerine. We cook and talk about adventures that we've had beyond these icy walls. Peter tells me of the Russian settlement here on the island, where the signs are in Cyrillic. I recall a trip where I was assigned my own team of huskies. I remember arriving to the sound of the dogs in the kennels. As I released the brake on the sled, their calls muted almost immediately to complete silence. The only noise that filled the chilly air was the swish of the runners beneath the wooden sleds, effortlessly gliding through the top layer of snow. Then we talked about the place I would visit the next day, the global seed bank. From the outside, it looks like a simple metal shed perched on the side of a snowy slope. But inside, there's a whole world waiting. For this place is home to seeds collected from all over the planet. They were sent by global scientists to keep safe so that they can be regrown from right here in the Arctic if we ever need them. The seed bank knows no boundaries, no man-made borders. All countries have helped build it. It's a beautiful and important example of people working together for the good of our world. Something about that thought lingers with me well after we put everything away. Even after Peter retires to his sleeping bag, I continue to feel the hope that this shed in the snow represents. Right here in the ice, I feel snug. I know that tomorrow will be an easy day. Getting off a snowy hill with a sled is always faster than climbing. I would soon have access to the convenience of central heating and a thick blanket on a proper bed. But for now, I'm snuggled in my icy bedroom, enveloped by my sleeping bag, watching the candlelight create dreamlike shadows on the frozen walls. I wouldn't trade places with a single person in the world. I rest my head on my pillow and feel my shoulders begin to relax. My feet are warm on the hot water bottle, and my legs feel heavy. From the hallway, I can hear the soft, gentle sound of Peter's breath. He's already asleep. As I exhale, I watch the air in front of me fill with a cloud of mist. Above me in the candlelight, the swishes of color seem to dance. In the shadows, I can see how far they go, but I can feel the support of the compressed snow that forms this glacier holding my mattress. I am being supported by a terrain normally thought of as inhospitable. Yet here I am, warm, comfortable, and happy. Nature has formed this incredible space, and a combination of intrigue, curiosity, and luck has brought me here to experience it for just one night. Lying here, watching the candlelight dim, I understand why there are others who have chosen to call this frozen archipelago home. There's something about being here in this remote wilderness, far from the rest of the world, being able to exist alongside the great wild, comfortably and simply, that makes complete sense. Outside, the wind is blowing, the temperature is dropping, and clouds are forming overhead. But in here, there is only warmth and silence. And as the last of my candlelight begins to wane, I close my eyes and listen. Softly, the glacier seems to breathe with me, resting alongside me and wrapping me up away from whatever happens beyond its walls. I will sleep soundly in this place, in my insulated nest, my sanctuary in the snow. The world above can wait, for there is only the here and now. So, above the northernmost town in the world, in this den of ice and light, within a layer of snow as old as time, under the midnight sky and 1,000 stars, I rest.